Good afternoon. I'm Terry Keys, a cancer education liaison for the Markey Cancer Center and a staff senator on the Professional Development Committee. I want to welcome you to this month's installment of the UK Staff Senate's Lunch and Learn series, where we discuss a wide range of topics to inform and enlighten. Be looking for an email with November's topic and be sure to tell a friend to join us next month. Our presenter today is Josh Taylor, the Assistant Director for the Graham Office of Career Management, where he prepares Gatton students to achieve employment success as knowledgeable, world-ready leaders. Josh began his career as a Finnish interpreter and held globally focused communications and marketing roles with Disney, Hands On Atlanta, and Rotary International in Quebec, Canada. He holds degrees in speech communication, French linguistics, strategic communication, and adult and higher education counseling. Josh also is the past president of the Kentucky Career Development Association. Thanks, Josh, for taking time to talk with us today about preparing ourselves for today's jobs market. And if any of you have questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat and I will read them for you. Or if you have something that's of more urgent nature, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask the question. Josh said that would be fine. So Josh, we yield the floor. Thank you.
All right. Well, Terry, thank you so much for the kind introduction. I want to say hello to everyone who's joining across Zoom. I appreciate you making the time to be in conversation with us here today. Just like Terry said, if you've got questions along the way during the talk, please feel free to take yourself off of mute or turn on your camera. We can have questions as we go. And of course, you're also welcome to add questions to the chat feature. Let me make sure that my clicker is working and we'll dive on in. Yep. All right, y'all. I think we're ready to go. As Terry was saying, I started off my career many years ago as a French interpreter before making a transition to doing interpreting work in more education-based capacities through Rotary International. I started off as an interpreter in industry for the Disney company. And I've mainly stayed in education ever since. That's really when I hit my stride and found my people, if you will. And in the work that I do today as a career advisor, it's all about helping folks figure out what's the work that I'm meant to do? What's the work that I'm going to love? Where will I be happy? Where will I be successful? And that's what I and my colleagues here in the Graham office do on behalf of Gatton business students. And as we were talking in the Professional Development Committee, in which Terry and I both serve, we were having conversations about what I think all of us are bearing witness to right now with what's often being called the Great Resignation. We hear about it on the news every day. People are maybe having career pivots. They're looking for new opportunities. And some of you on the call right now might be looking for new opportunities on the other side of campus, right here at UK. Some of you might be in a position where your spouse is potentially going to be relocated to, who knows, Dallas, Texas, and you might find yourself needing to look for new work elsewhere. We might be thinking about looking for a new opportunity to help take care of friends or family during this COVID situation that we're in. I think, as we all know, COVID has really illuminated so many shifts in where we work and how we work, remotely, in person. And it's challenging and inspiring a lot of people to ask some really intentional questions about where they work and how they work, tied to job satisfaction. And this graphic that you see here, it was recently trending on LinkedIn. And my director, Sarah Madison, here in the office, she and I both teach a career development course. And we showed this graphic to our students. And I have to tell you, in some of the sections, they very much related to the first definition of how we're taught to measure success. And they weren't terribly interested in what IBM has offered up as maybe a different measure of success. And then when we taught the class to a separate set of students 2 hours later, that group of students were quite taken with what IBM is suggesting here. I'll say that to say this. I think that we all have a personal standard for what is going to make us feel successful, make us feel grounded and happy in the work that we do. And this very much gets into what career advisors call motivations and values and that sort of thing. But I wanted to kind of show you this as a way to ease into the talk that I'm going to do today. Now, I'm going to lead by saying this, y'all. I'm going to hit across 4 different topics that you see here: job satisfaction, brand management, resume refreshes, and interview strategy. Any one of these 4 topics, folks like me often spend an entire workshop just on that one topic. But when we were brainstorming this idea in our committee, we thought there might be value in sort of doing a 30,000-foot flyover, if you will, of all of these connected topics as kind of a best practice flyover, things to keep on your radar if and when you find yourself looking to be on the market, looking for a new opportunity. So I'm going to tell you that we'll kind of move at a fast pace, and I really do want to give you really kind of the overarching best practice tips, if I may, across these 4 fronts. Here in our office at the Graham Office of Career Management, we tell students that the steps that they need to take as they move through career development and career self-awareness come back to these questions. And I'll tell you that it's a cycle. It's not as if you just answer one of these questions and boom, move on to the next, and then you're done. It really is a cycle. And I think we probably can all relate to that when we look back on our own career trajectories. But the questions to keep in mind are these: learn who you are, understand what you're able to bring to the table, plan where you'll go, have a good sense of what are all the options and opportunities that are theoretically out there for which you might be a great fit, and finally get where you're going. Make sure you've got that polish, everything from how to interview well, how to turn in a good resume, and really network effectively. But these are the 3 steps that we ground our work in for students, and I wanted to share those same 3 steps with you, remembering it really is a cycle though. It's not as if we just do one and then we're finished. So let's talk about this first topic that I wanted to briefly address, which is job satisfaction, really successfully connecting who we are and what it is that we do professionally. I want to lead by giving you an interesting statistic that comes from Gallup. Some of what's informed here also comes from Forbes and the Job Economist. But y'all, Gallup, you might be familiar with Gallup. They are a data analytics organization that tracks all number of things, one of which is job satisfaction in the US. And they've been looking at this for decades. And over the last 30 years, the numbers really haven't changed much. They fluctuate between 70 and 85% of working Americans who have a college degree find themselves in roles in which they are not happy. I'll say that again, 3 out of 4, let's say, 75% of degree holding working Americans are not satisfied in their job. 1 in 3 we find are actively thinking about making a change. And for a career advisor like me, these are pretty troubling statistics. I tell my students, y'all, I want you to be one of the 1 in 4 who are in what I call good career alignment, which means that what you're doing brings you happiness, brings you a sense of success. But 3 out of 4 do not have this for reasons that I'll touch on briefly. A visual that I show students, and I want to show this to you all, is the way to get into career alignment is to answer some of these questions that you see here. A piece of it is what you're good at. A piece of it is what you love. But the other piece that's out there is understanding, where is the opportunity? I can be good at something. I can even love something, but hey, I love this. Is there a way for me to connect that to the world of work? And this is where data and research come into play. Sometimes you'll hear folks say, oh, just figure out your passion and turn that into a job. And I wish it were that simple. But don't get me wrong, I do believe that passion and interests and motivators, all of these things are a piece of the puzzle. But I wouldn't encourage neither a student or anyone on this call to simply go about it looking at it through that what do you love lens. You also need to know what you're good at. You need to know what's out there. And so I love this Venn diagram. And this Venn diagram touches on 4 different elements. We here in our office call these the VIPs, the very important pieces, if you will, of career self-awareness. And I want to walk y'all through how and where to check in with yourself on these VIPs, because folks who are in work that honors their VIPs, they're much more likely to be in good career alignment. They're much more likely to be happy and really be in that 25% of folks who are loving what they do for all the right reasons. So I want to walk you through these. The V is for your value motivators. In short, what matters to you? And y'all, everyone is motivated differently. I'll tell you that. For some people, it's salary. For some people, it's going to be geography. It's very important to live in a certain city or a state or a region. For some people, they're going to be motivated by a flexible work-life balance. Maybe it's the opportunity to be creative. Maybe it's the opportunity to do any number of things, but we all value things differently. Interests, pretty straightforward. Where and how do the things that really do excite us and intrigue us Where and how could that intersect with the world of work? Our personality wiring, what makes us tick? And finally, our strengths. And I want to go through each of these briefly to give you really more of a heightened sense of what I mean by these VIPs. So your value motivators, like I said before, anyone that tells you, oh, just, figure out what you love, the end. But it is a part of it. It is a part of it. So find out what matters to you would be a good way to say this. And by the way, what y'all see on the screen right here is not a comprehensive list, but it is a bucket full of things that are typical motivators. Like I said, salary, geography, what's the work environment? What's the culture? Is it a casual work environment? Is it a very, you got to suit up and, take the elevator to the 35th floor, anything in between. But figuring out what are the pieces of the environment puzzle, the things that I'm going to be motivated by, the things that I value. And you can even zoom in specifically on the organization that you're with or the organization that you're aspiring to be with and check in. Hey, are all of the things that I see here, is it in the right location? Is it the right size? What are my work hour options? Is it remote? Is it in person? Can it be flexible? Will I have to travel a lot? All of these are the sorts of questions that you want to have a pretty comfortable fit. I'm not going to tell you that every single one of these things here you need to have a green check mark on, but you'd want to have, the better part, I would say. And when you do, you'll know, hey, this is probably going to be a good fit for me. It's aligning with my work values. It's aligning with the things that motivate me. So that's the V in the VIPs. Let me switch now and give you a brief overview of interests. Career advisors will tell you that the world of work can be thought of in these 6 broader quadrants that you see here. And folks are generally drawn to 2 or 3 of these quadrants and maybe not so much the rest. That's a hard and fast generalization, but typically 2 or 3. For me, for example, I'm drawn to what you see here, these areas that are called social, artistic, and enterprising. But let me start at the beginning. Some careers are what we call realistic. We call these the doers. And as you see in the realistic quadrant, very hands-on, maybe outdoorsy, working with tools, technology, that sort of thing. We've got careers that are investigative. We call these the thinkers. These are people who are very much drawn to things like math and science and problem solving and really taking a deep dive into understanding how things work and really analyzing that. As we move on to the A, the artistic careers, we call these the creators, not just, paint brushes and pencils, but also, music, journalism, culinary, the arts, theater, anything like that. But the through line there is that the work is creative in nature. As we get down to social folks, we call these the helpers. The through line there is that these careers are meant to help people in whatever capacity. It could be a career advisor like me. It could be a financial planner, a doctor, a nurse, a teacher, a psychologist. But the through line is that the work is meant to help people or society at large. That's what brings social folks together. As we look at E for enterprising, we call these the persuaders. These are careers wherein it's really all about persuading, leading. You often see people in business or law or politics drawn into these kinds of careers. And last but not least, conventional. We call these folks the organizers. They very much like data. They like procedures. They like routines. So think accounting, think HR, that sort of thing. Now, again, people typically have 2 or 3 areas of interest that they're drawn to, and every career that's out there, whether you're a career advisor, a financial analyst, an architect, a chef, careers themselves are also fusions of these different letters. And if you want to take a deep dive into this, there's a really cool assessment that's out there called the Strong Interest Inventory. And you can also visit the ONET and do a really cool deep dive about how interests intersect with the world of work. So this brings me to P in the VIPs, personality wiring. Maybe some of you here on the call have done a personality assessment like 16P or the MBTI, which is really the gold standard. All of us here in our office are certified in the MBTI. But this is all about how you're wired. It's a brain-based thing. And I want to be very clear. You can't, and if I did a whole workshop on personality, I'd show you how all of these letters come together and create 16 different personality profiles. But I want to tell you, I can't look at someone and say, oh, you're an ISTJ, you should do this. You're an ENFP, you should do that. If you've ever done these kinds of assessments, I want you to know any personality type can do any kind of career. What this tool really does is give you a good sense of, given your own wiring, how will you take that wiring into the world of work? So the E and the I that you see here, that's all about extroversion and introversion. The J and P is all about, how do you like to structure yourself? Some people are very, hey, I want schedules, I like routines, I want plans. Some people prefer that, and that's a brain-based preference that they have. Meanwhile, you might have a friend or a family member who, hey, they don't like schedules, they don't like routines, they like to be spontaneous, flexible, go with the flow, that sort of thing. And we're all wired differently across these 4 different dimensions. And when you throw it up in the air, it can land in 16 different ways. So this is a super cool assessment that won't tell you what you ought to do for a living, but will give you tremendous insight in how you prefer to be. And that will give you good insight into what sort of work environments or work responsibilities are going to be a natural fit for your brain-based wiring. And last but not least, in my VIPs, S is for strengths. And I bet a lot of you on the call are familiar with the assessment called the Clifton Strengths. It comes from the folks at Gallup. But this assessment is all about getting a good sense of, what are our talents? Where do we naturally shine? And how can we bring those talents to expression, not only in the world of work, but really in every area of our lives? And the refreshing thing about a strengths-based approach, y'all, is that it's all about capitalizing on our strengths, our talents, and really helping maximize those, as opposed to a conventional development model where it's, where are my weaknesses and how can I improve on that? Not to say that being aware of your weaknesses and managing your weaknesses isn't important. It is, but I'm here to tell you, and Gallup has tons of research to back this up, your chances for success are going to be all the greater when you identify your talents and figure out how to optimize those. And this particular assessment looks at 34 master talents and strengths, if you will, across these 4 different leadership domains. And you figure out, hey, what are my top 5? That's going to be my gateway into strength. And so if you're interested in learning more about this, a lot of us here on campus, I'm among them, are Gallup Clifton Strengths certified. And I bet you, if you're interested, reach out to me or other folks on campus. But I highly, highly encourage, of all the assessments that are out there, this one, I believe, has tremendous potential, because when we figure out where we naturally shine and how that can show up for us in the work that we do, it really can be a game changer. So again, to bring this back, you see here that in this Venn diagram that we use, it touches on the VIPs, but it also gets out there and says, hey, all that's great, but then you got to connect that to what's out there. Let's do some research. Let's figure out where are the opportunities. And that's what folks like career advisors like me are here to do, is help people maybe find those dots or connect those dots. All right, y'all. So that's a quick flyover of the VIPs. I want to talk now about brand management, personal and professional brand management. Really, your brand is what is your reputation. When other people think of you and who you are and what you can deliver, that's your brand. And I want to show you this. This is an image that we show our students. Listen, you don't have to be Oprah Winfrey or Lady Gaga to have a brand. They've obviously got brands, both in the commercial sense and in the sense that we're talking about. But all of us do have a brand. And what I would say to you is this. Your brand, your personal brand, is the intersection of how you see yourself and how others see you. So there's a piece of it that we're in control of. There's a piece of it that other people are bringing to the table. And so we want to manage our brand as effectively as we can and really put out there pieces of ourselves that, certainly professionally speaking, that resonate well for us. Now, if we're talking strictly about our professional brand, I would say to you that this is all about connecting who you are to what you want to do professionally. And this is what I want you to know. It kind of, take your VIPs. What are your values? What's your personality wiring? What are your strengths? What are the experiences that you have under your belt? What have you done before? How do other people see us? This all contributes to our brand. And y'all, part of the value of when you take assessments like the MBTI, 16P, Clifton Strengths, it really gives us a language and a vocabulary with which to understand our brand and communicate that to others. And you see here, kind of in these 4 different colors, maybe 4 different brand identities. I'll just tell you, this is loosely based on me, my mom, my dad, and my younger brother. So my mom, someone whose brand would be all about excellent people skills, excellent customer service. But when you think Sylvia, that's what you think of. My little brother, Andrew, listen, if you want data, if you want technology, if you want someone to crunch the numbers, that's my brother. I'd like to believe that part of what I bring to the table is some creativity, some energy. That's part of what I like to think my brand is all about. Last but not least, a guy like my dad, when you think Ben, he is detail oriented, he is efficient, he's going to get the job done. But all of these are kind of big picture ideas of, hey, when you hire a Josh Taylor, when you hire a Terry Keys, when you hire a Sarah Madison, this is what you get, because this is what I am able to do. And it's very, very important to be able to communicate to the people to whom you're speaking when you're on the market, to really effectively show them who you are through your brand. And these assessments are a great way to get some language and some vocabulary. Now, I think we all probably know that your brand, not only does it exist online and develop online, it also develops in real life and the people that you know and the people that you meet. But I'm checking my clock here. I want to show you a quick video about how online brand management through social media platforms is an important piece of what you need to keep your eye on when you're out there. Your social media brand, whether what you do on platforms like Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, we could make a whole list. I want you to know, not only are there things that you need to be cautious about, but you should also consider all of these platforms an opportunity to promote yourself. So these are platforms that have to be navigated very carefully. I found a video that encapsulates some of the best things to know real fast. So let's take a quick look.
If you are looking for a job right now, don't underestimate the impact of your social media accounts. They can help or hurt you. In our continuing series on how Tri-Staters are rebounding from the pandemic, this morning WCPO 9 News reporter Lisa Smith joins us live to explain kind of the do's and don'ts of social media during that job search, and even just refreshing, Lisa.
Yeah, that's right, Julie. Good morning. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, we have all of those. They're a great way for us to stay connected with our families and friends. But what do they say about you when you're looking for a job? And is your potential boss using it as a way to determine whether or not to hire you?
I had like a really grainy profile picture that was like a cropped photo with other people in it because it was my only picture where I had like a suit on.
This is Dominic DeStazio's old profile picture on LinkedIn. The recent UC grad says his Twitter page was outdated too.
So I was like 14, I think.
Experts say when you're looking for a job, what you post on social media is part of the interview.
Nowadays, if you're going for an interview, you've been selected for an interview, more than likely the hiring manager has checked out your social media presence.
Dana Glasgow has been coaching job hunters like DeStazio for more than 20 years through her company, Cincinnati Career Coach. She says updating your LinkedIn profile is critical to keeping recruiters interested.
LinkedIn is where most hiring managers go to first.
She shared several tips like make sure you have an updated professional photo, include 2 or 3 strong references, make sure your resume matches your LinkedIn profile, and use your account to talk about you.
This is an opportunity to really tout your accomplishments. What difference have you made in your previous positions? Why would a company want to hire you?
Meanwhile, since platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter are more casual, you should be careful what you post.
Let me read your Facebook. Let me read some of your postings on Twitter. If it kind of gives me an uncomfortable feeling, I say, let's get rid of it.
By the way, DeStazio has a new picture and updated profile, and they're working.
Once recruiters started contacting me, I realized that, it's definitely the best way to go. Just especially during a pandemic, you can't go network in person.
And DeSagio also tells us that he does now have a job offer. Meanwhile, some of the other tips they talked about included making sure that your LinkedIn has lots of connections and try to avoid those controversial posts about religion and politics. Reporting live downtown, Lisa Smith, WCPO 9 News.
All right, y'all, as you might imagine, we do entire workshops, 45-minute long workshops just on social media management with our students. But I thought that was a good flyover, kind of hitting on the best practices. And you heard a lot about the mention of LinkedIn. If you're not using LinkedIn, I encourage you to do so. As you see here, 740 million and counting global users. It's an extraordinary platform that allows you not only to signal your own brand through your profile, think of it almost as a resume that never sleeps, if you will. But as was just mentioned, it's also a gateway to creating connections and maintaining connections with people in your field. I every day hop on LinkedIn and chat with career advisors that I know all across Kentucky. We might say, hey, here's something that we're navigating here at the Graham office. How are you all addressing this with your students? So it's a really cool platform to keep people in touch and really grow professionally and exchange ideas with colleagues, both near and far. Last but not least, and this is what a lot of folks don't know about LinkedIn, is it's also a job search platform. You can look for opportunities on LinkedIn. So in that respect, it's competing with things like Indeed.com or Monster.com. But some folks I find just thought that LinkedIn was an online resume, if you will. It is that, but it's a lot of other things, including searching for job opportunities. So check out LinkedIn, be on LinkedIn. If you're not, I do highly recommend that platform. All right, y'all. Yes,
Josh, I have a question.
Hey, Terry, thank you.
Joseph asked, what are your thoughts on compartmentalizing your personal social media versus your professional social media?
I have heard, it's a good question, and thank you for bringing this up. I have found that there are some hiring recruiters who are very happy, when they find those more personal platforms, just as was mentioned on the newscast. When we think Facebook, if I take a trip on a vacation, I'm going to be talking about that on Facebook perhaps, or maybe my Instagram, but I'm not going to be talking about that on LinkedIn. So I think some of these platforms, just by the nature of what they're meant to do, it is fair to say, hey, I've got, some of these compartmentalized, if you will, windows into my life. Again, on Instagram and Facebook, I might be talking about my friends and my family, whereas LinkedIn is strictly about my professional life. What I would say is, no matter the platform that you're on, whatever you're putting out there, just know that you're putting it out there for an audience, and be proud of what you're putting out there, be able to stand behind what you're putting out there. Also take advantage on some of those other platforms where it might be more about your life outside of the professional sense of yourself. If you need to use filters or, control who gets to see your content, I think that's all well and good. But I think it is absolutely the case that these different platforms speak in different ways to who we are.
There's also a follow-up question, and it may be an HR question, but still Amber wants to know, so is it okay to search social media as a hiring manager at UK?
That would be a question that I'm not in a position to answer. I don't know if that's something that UK does. I'm absolutely happy to tell you that the recruiters with whom we work here at Gatton, it is their policy to look at social media. So, we work with companies, we work with multinational companies, all the way down to local firms. And most hiring managers, I think the statistic we might have heard in that video is about 60 to 70% of all hiring managers look for a social media presence on their candidates. And so we as individuals might, have some feelings about that, whether we think that's fair or whether we don't. The fact is that the majority of recruiters will Google your name, will look to see, hey, is Josh on LinkedIn? Is Josh on Twitter? And if so, what's he saying? Just as we heard. Yeah. So I can't speak to whether or not UK does it, but that's a good question. And if anyone is on the call that is part of that wing of UK and in an HR capacity, it's an interesting question, but I don't know the answer myself.
Thank you, Josh.
Sure. Thank you. So y'all, this brings us to resumes. Let's talk about resumes. Yeah, I think we all know that if you're on the market and you're putting yourself out there, you're going to have to do a refresh of your resume. And I'll just answer the question here, but I ask students, hey, y'all, how long do you think a hiring manager will spend? How long will she or he spend looking at your resume with human eyes the first time that it's seen? And the answer might be pretty surprising. But it's about down to 6 seconds. A few years ago, we were saying 10. Right now, the best practice number that we're trotting out is 6 seconds. And you might be thinking, oh my goodness, what do you mean 6 seconds? My resume is a summary of everything that I have to offer, all of my experience, my degrees, my years of education, all my skill sets. And you're saying that it's 6 seconds? Well, yes. But there is a little bit of a catch. And what I want you all to know, and by the way, I could spend a lot of time talking about what's called an applicant tracking system, really just a fancy way of saying that a computer is going to look at your application documents and scan them before moving them forward. I'll say more about that in a moment. But once your documents do get in front of a person, he or she will spend about 6 seconds scanning it. And if they like what they see, if what's popping off the page makes a good impression, they put it in what we at the Graham office call the yes pile. And if they don't like what they see in a number of seconds, they'll put it in the no pile. Now, y'all, once you make it into the yes pile, the hiring team then will go back and carefully read that resume and all the rich information that you've put there, all the time and effort that you put into getting your words just right, your margins just so. I promise you it will get a careful read, but you do have to pass that knee-jerk reaction of, as I scan this, do I see relevant experiences? Are the right kind of words popping off the page? So getting past that yes pile moment is important. So what I'd say to you is make sure your resume lands in the yes pile. Both the format and the content matter to wind in the yes pile. And then, matter further once it gets a second and deeper read. So it is 6 seconds, but it's more. And like I mentioned earlier, there are applicant tracking systems out there. We call them ATSs in career advising. I'm sure folks on the call who work in HR are much even more familiar with them than folks like I am. But what I'll tell you is that applicant tracking systems have a really hard time with templates. Templates, as you see here, this is a very common template that we see a lot here in our office that students will bring in. You can get templates from, Microsoft Word, Google, Moo is a developer of templates. And I'll say this, templates visually can have a nice look about them. They're very, they might look, a pop of color, look a bit modern. But I will tell you, certain templates are out there so much that it's just immediately clear, hey, this person didn't really handcraft this resume, if you will. They just pulled up a template. So I don't think templates do folks a whole lot of favors. But the bigger concern is that a lot of ATSs cannot effectively scan a template, because a template is in effect really just a table in which we embed information. So I would caution anyone, hey, if you're ever in a click here to apply scenario, which is what the fact is for most instances, if you're ever in a click here to apply scenario, I would urge you to be submitting a resume that's going to look a lot more like now what you see here, crafted from scratch in Microsoft Word or Google Docs, but without all of the fancy bells and whistles and graphics and images. It will make it a much cleaner scan for computer purposes. Now, that being said, if you're handing your resume directly to a human being, or if you're emailing it as an attachment to a contact that you have, and it's a human-to-human transaction, hey, by all means, maybe a more visually creative resume will actually do you a lot of favors. But when you're in a click here to apply scenario, wherein you can expect that computers are going to be involved, I'd recommend a much more streamlined version of your resume like what you see here. Now, I want to tell you this, your bullet points, y'all, when you talk about what you have to offer, that's the meat of the resume. That's the most important piece. And one of the recruiters with whom we work here in our office, she says, every bullet point I see has to pass the so what test. And this is a recruiter from Goldman Sachs who uses what she calls the so what test. And I want to tell you what she means by that, give you a quick tip on how you can survive a so what test. We call it the CAR model in our office. Context, action, results, CAR. That's why we call it the CAR model. The best kind of bullet points are going to give a little bit of all three. Now, your context is set up with the verb that you use. An increasing trend that we see is some folks are actually just saying, hey, teamwork, colon, boom. And they just give it to you like that, like colon, bullet point, problem solving. And then they let you know, but they will even put the word out there. Hey, if you read this bullet point, it's about problem solving. If you read this bullet point, it's about my creativity. But in any case, whether you put the word out there front and center or not, the verb that you use can help trigger the context. If I want to have a bullet point about teamwork, as an example, I'm going to use a verb like collaborated, assisted, partnered, helped. All of those words do the heavy lifting to signal teamwork. Meanwhile, if I want to signal something like problem solving, I might use a verb like analyzed, improved, reduced, corrected, something like that. But y'all, then it needs to go into actions and results. And as you see here, the actions are shown in blue, the results are shown in purple. Most resume writers simply stay in actions mode, meaning that they might have a bullet point that simply says, collaborated with colleagues to develop a unique marketing campaign, and then they stop. If you stop in actions mode, if you stop when you're just in job responsibility mode, someone like Rochelle at Goldman Sachs might say, so what? You made a marketing campaign. But I want to know, was the marketing campaign successful? Did you meet your objectives? How many impressions did you get? And so as you see here in these examples, these are bullet points that not only get across the actions, but they move forward to get into the results. So it really is a did X to get Y model, actions plus results. Your bullet point might say like action, 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 comma, which resulted in, or action, 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 comma, in order to, boom, boom, boom. But you really want to get across, this is what I did, and this is why it mattered. And you'll know what the result is. How did it help my boss? How did it help my coworkers? How did it help my division? How did it help the general public? In our case, how did it maybe help our students? But you really want to showcase, here's what I do, but here's what I accomplished, and here's what the results are. So that CAR model is vital. And not everyone does that. Most bullet points stay in action mode, but if you can get your bullet points to get into results mode, it's a game changer. So y'all, your brand, your resume, your network, all of these are tickets to the interview. And I'm going to very quickly now, this brings me to my fourth and final point. I want to give you some very quick tips on how to get ready for the interview, because if you make it into the S pile and you make a good impression with your resume and your brand online is looking good and people in your network are singing your praises, you'll probably get invited to an interview. And let's be honest, it's human nature for most folks, interviews are a bit nerve-wracking. And that's understandable. And so I tell everyone, go into the interview having done a bit of homework. First, homework on yourself. And what I mean by that is know what your VIPs are, know what matters to you, know what your strengths are, be able to articulate what your goals are professionally, be able to navigate the kind of questions that we can expect, but be able to tell stories about ourselves in ways that matter. I'm going to give you a tip in just a moment about how to tell stories that land effectively in an interview. But it really is knowing what you bring to the table. Now, the flip side of the coin, and this is the side of the coin that I think some people often forget when they head into interview preparation, is do your homework on this employer. Understand who they are. Now, they haven't hired you yet, so you're not expected to be an expert in who they are and what it is that they do, but you need to be able to come across in the interview as having done your homework. Understand what the position requires, understand what that office or division or unit is there to do. And how do you see you fitting in to helping them accomplish their goals? What's their brand? Well, what are their pain points? What's their difficulty? When we were recently hiring for a career advisor here in our office, we had some candidates who came in and really did understand, hey, you all want to get the career message out to students, but your office students aren't required to come meet you. So it's a lot of it is about marketing. A lot of it is about helping students understand, why should I even see a career advisor? And we had candidates who came in and knew out the gate that was a challenge that we're always having to overcome. And it was so refreshing to know, hey, they did their homework. They understand already what we deal with here in our office. They're not even hired yet. So that's great. So do your homework on yourself. Do your homework on the employer. Now, y'all, a lot of interviews are going to have a handful of questions, and we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what the questions will be, but I will tell you this: the majority of interview questions really just come down to these three key things. Can you produce? Can you problem solve? And can you be a team player? Now, they might package that question in what's called a behavior-based question. Josh, can you tell us about a time that you and your colleagues were working on an initiative and you ran into an unexpected problem? What did you do? All right, well, as I put that through my filter, I can see, listen, that question is a 2 for the price of 1. It's a, how did you and your colleagues deal with an unexpected problem? But really and truly, y'all, if you can go into an interview knowing that these 3 master themes are likely to get brought up in some shape or form, what I encourage you to do is be prepared to tell stories that address these master themes. And when you hear the question, you can immediately think to yourself, oh, I've got this. This is a team question. I'm going to tell about the time when I was at my previous institution and my director and I came up with this initiative. And then you go from there, which brings me to this point. We coach our students to use what's called the STAR method. Situation, task, action, result. This is a framework that does 2 things. On the one hand, it keeps you within within the lane. It's like the guardrails to keep you from going off track. You know, I bet you, because I can relate to this, y'all. When I was young, I can just remember some of my interview responses, and I didn't know what I was saying. I just was talking. Who knows what I was saying? The STAR method can keep you grounded, let them know the situation. Well, when I was an internship manager at Morehead State University, boom, that's the situation. Task. I was responsible for, boom, boom, boom. And then you move them through the actions, you move them through the results, but STAR, it gives them, the hiring committee, exactly what they need to hear, and it gives you, the applicant, some boundaries and guardrails to keep you focused and keep you on track. But my advice to you is go into an interview with a collection of stories that you can tell in a STAR method way that are connected to what you can produce, how you can work with others, and problems that you can solve. And that, I promise you, will give you a lot of material with which to work. Now, you don't memorize these stories like monologues in a school play. It needs to be fluid, it needs to be authentic, but you do know, hey, if given the chance, I really want to talk about this initiative that I created for my team last year. I bet you a question will give me the chance to highlight that, and I bet it will, especially if it's about how you can produce, how you can problem solve, and how you can work with others. Y'all, I'm looking at my clock here, and we're about to get into hopefully maybe some questions. I've just got a minute or 2 left. But to wrap this up, I want to remind you that as you're out there, you've got all of these moving pieces here. You know, leverage your network, talk to people that you know, use platforms like LinkedIn to really reach out to people who might be in a position to help you do a little bit of research and data collection on, hey, if I make a pivot from this office to that office, or from this industry to that industry, would I be a good fit? So talk to your network. They're there not only to help you, hopefully even help open doors for you, but also serve as references for you and all of those things. So your network is important. You know, manage yourself effectively online when you're turning in your resume and your application and you're writing your resume and your cover letter. Go into it being able to really articulate your brand. Hey, if you hire me, here's what you get. And this is, again, circle back to those VIPs so that you know that, hey, if I'm honoring my values and my motivators, if this is going to honor my interests, if it's going to be a good fit for how I'm wired, and if it's going to help me use my natural strengths, if I can check off those 4 VIPs, this opportunity is probably going to be a pretty good fit for me. And that's what I want for all my students. That's what I would want for everyone on this call. I think that's what we want for each other as colleagues. And then if you're doing all this right, hopefully you've got a ticket to the interview and you're really there to articulate, here's who I am. Here's how I want to be a part of what you do. Here's what I can offer. And that's really what it's all about. So y'all, that brings me to the end of what I want to say. I wanted to leave a little bit of time to either answer questions or give you a few minutes back to your lunch break. But I do want to say this. I want to thank everyone that's joined me for this talk. I want to thank Staff Senate for helping, deliver these kinds of series. So thank you for your time. Terry, that brings me to the end of my talk. We can open it up if you like to any other thoughts or questions.
Right. Well, thank you, Josh. I really appreciate that. So there's just tons of great information in there, wherever you are in your career, whether you're, toward the end of your career as I am, although maybe thinking about starting a new career, or if you're just getting started. So we have several questions in the chat. Some of them are more written in the form of statements, actually, but I have
All
one
right.
So Victoria started it, and I won't go through all of them necessarily, but one of them was, so you have the passion, you love your job, but the money's not there, or your organization doesn't recognize your value. So what are you supposed to do with that?
Understand the question correctly. All the VIP pieces are there, but maybe not necessarily compensation. Is that right?
That sounds right.
This, that very first graphic that I showed, where we're traditionally thought to, salary, and then the second graphic, salary was less important. When we show that graphic to our students, usually there's pushback. They're like, hey, salary is more important than what IBM is saying right there. And I can personally, appreciate that. Hey, I once had a mentor at a previous institution. She said, money will not make you happy, but the lack of money can make you miserable. And that's exactly how she said it. And I've never forgotten that turn of phrase. So yes, to the point of this question, salary is important because we've got to be able to take care of ourselves and our family. Some institution or some work environments, I think higher ed sort of falls into this. Sometimes there are very strict boundaries and ladders that dictate compensation scales. And then in other industries, there's much more fluidity and flexibility in terms of how we can be compensated. My advice is to have an honest conversation with your director, with the people to whom you report, and articulate where you're at and where you hope to be. And for me, I think balancing honesty with a professional and constructive conversation about where are the windows of opportunity for me with your supervisor. That's what we coach our students to do. And that's what I'd coach anyone here at UK or elsewhere to do. I hope that's helpful.
And I'll open it up now. I have more, but if anybody else has a question, you want to unmute yourself and ask the question, feel free. If not, I'll ask the next question.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Great. So I asked this in the chat, but I remember earlier in my career, especially, a lot of us have jobs where our actions on a day-to-day basis or the projects that we're involved in, they don't always generate data to show the results. And so, a lot of the examples I see are data oriented, and I remember scrounging for data early on, but can you, give us some recommendations for those of us who, we're not in marketing?
Sure.
So there isn't a lot of data involved.
Right. That's a very good point, because yes, it's super easy to quantify. I did a marketing campaign and it reached an audience of 50,000, or we increased sales by 55%. To your point, not everything is measurable in that way. What I would say is look for what are maybe what's the impact that we can't quantify? Let me give you this example that's quickly coming to mind. I was working with a student recently. He's an accounting major. He has a part-time job right now at Kroger. And he was like, all right, I want to obviously put this on my resume, but Josh, if I'm being honest, I'm the person who goes and does curbside delivery. So if you order ketchup, mustard, and hot dogs, I find it, put it in a bag, bring it to your car. I don't know how to make that sound good in my resume. And I said, listen, we're going to make a great bullet point about this, but hear me when I say this isn't about the ketchup or the mustard or the hot dog buns. Let's put this in the context of right now, especially during COVID. When someone uses the Kroger app to order groceries online and then pulls up to the curbside delivery, what you are doing is helping, for, in this case, your customer. You are saving them valuable time. You're helping protect their health and safety, and you're providing exceptional customer service. So this is about time, safety, and service. It's not about ketchup, mustard, and buns. And so my advice is to try to find the window or the angle to think about what it is that we do. Like, maybe in student support services, or let's think about if someone's in campus housing, we don't necessarily need to make bullet points about how many beds, exist within a given residence hall. It's about helping create a sense of community. It's about, providing a larger set of contexts for the student experience. So there are ways to kind of show, here's the value of what I'm doing, and it's not quantifiable at all, but there's value there. So when we look for the result in a CAR model, the context action result, the result doesn't always have to be a dollar or amount or a percentage point. Ask ourselves, when I and my unit and my colleagues, when we do the work that we do, how is it affecting the community? How is it affecting customers? How is it affecting my boss? How's it affecting my coworker? That sort of thing. And then you can always reach out to someone like me or other career advisors who have to brainstorm about these kinds of things every single day. And I bet you that that I or someone else on campus like me can help you find the good results that we can bake into solid language on a resume. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
So Josh, I have a follow-up to that particular question. So obviously you work in the Gatton College, so I don't know if, where else could we go? Where are there other resources for people who maybe aren't at Gatton? Are you opening yourself up for everybody on this call with the 71 people to come see you?
Hey, it might be overwhelming if I get 71 emails, but hey, I will say, Terry, folks, anyone on this call, sure, feel free to email me or to call me here at my office. Now, I will say, I know that HR used to provide some more specific career services to faculty and staff. I'm not sure that that's the case anymore. And I don't know if there's anyone on the call who's more affiliated with UKHR that could speak to that. But for my own sake, I would say that, hey, I know there's folks like me at the Graham office. I won't speak for anyone at the other career offices that I know on campus, but if you know a career advisor on campus that typically works with students, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they'd be happy to also talk to a fellow colleague here at UK.
So Amanda put a note in the chat that says the Alumni Career Services welcomes employees to work with our team for career-related needs. And so you can become a member of the Alumni Association if that's something that you want to look into.
Yes,
also,
that's probably my friend and colleague Amanda Shagney. I don't have the chat pulled up. Yes, thank you for that, Amanda. Yes, she and Caroline are fantastic. They are our colleagues in Alumni Career Services. So yes, folks like Amanda, folks like Caroline, and there are other units around campus that are career oriented and career facing. So I think the majority of us will be happy to help you along the way.
And then Joseph Lutz has put in the chat a link to training career development. So if you're on the call now, you can go to that link and it'll take you there. So another question that we got a little bit earlier was how important is the cover letter? Is that really when everything? So it's a two-part question. How important is the cover letter? And then how important is the resume separate from, because at UK, we have to put everything into that online system.
Right.
And they're wanting to know how important is the resume separate from what's put online. So, but we'll start with the cover letter. How important is that cover letter?
Perfect. Yeah, I'll start with the cover letters, and then Terry, help me circle back to that second question. Mm-hmm. Okay, so cover letters. I will tell you that some companies, Goldman Sachs comes to mind, will tell you, do not give us a cover letter. We don't want it. We won't read it. Please don't. And then other organizations will require a cover letter. And then some organizations don't make it clear. They'll say, please upload your resume and any other supporting documents. So it really is, it's out there. My philosophy and our philosophy on the Graham office is that unless you are explicitly told not to, the cover letter is probably a good opportunity for you to articulate a number of different things. It allows you to really flesh out the context of your story and why you're attracted to a position. It can help be a measure of your professionalism. If you really, knock out that business letter format and you have an excellent writing style, it can say something about your communication skills. So as long as your cover letter is just, not doing you a disservice, it is an opportunity to really showcase a little bit more of your context, a personalized shaping of your story that really pairs with your resume. I think of them as kind of, almost a two-part document, if you will. The resume and the cover letter, it's like, I don't know why the metaphor of Batman and Robin is coming to my mind, but that's what just came to my mind. But it really is a team. And I would encourage you to have a well-crafted cover letter unless the organization tells you not to. Mm-hmm. And there are organizations out there that will tell you not to.
Well, I know in our office, so we really take a good look at the cover letter because we want to know about your grammar. We want to know about your spelling.
Exactly, that sort of thing.
and how you put your thoughts together on a page, because
Right.
we do editing in our office. And so if you
Right.
can't put a comma in the right space, or you don't know how to use an apostrophe or
Right.
either an apostrophe or a hyphen, that's a big flag for us. So it's massively important for, particularly in higher education, that your cover letter be absolutely error-free. I can tell you
I
that.
agree with all of those things that you said there. Now, Terry, what was the second part, the extension of that question?
So with the resume question, I'm glad I know how this works here, because it doesn't work that way everywhere. But we have to we basically put our resume into this online system
Mhm.
so that it will generate a resume. And I have seen some of those.
Okay.
And what this person was asking is how important is a separate resume
Oh, I see.
as opposed to the one that's going to be generated,
Right.
which may be the one that gets sent, as opposed to
Right.
the one that you're going to work for 5 days or weeks on, and then
Got it.
it may or not get sent.
And by all means, Terry, please help me in responding to this question with your own knowledge of how you see this on your side. What my understanding is that the information that you put into the application itself is a large part of what the ATS is going to scan through, and HR and other factors are going to look at, enter here, all of this. That's what's going to eventually push you through to the hiring committee. But then the hiring committee, at least in my experiences at both other higher education institutions and on hiring committees in which I've served here at UK, we're looking much more at the resume. Yes, we have access to all the fine print that goes into the HR application, and I'm sure the ATS helps scan all of that for all the right reasons, but the hiring committee is going to look at the resume. And so to that end, I think the resume is very important. And not only for those first 6 seconds so that you get yes piled, but all the more important once you're in the yes pile to really articulate a story and create a compelling reason to say, hey, we're only going to interview 5 to 7 people. She should be one of them based on what we see here.
I will follow that with saying that if it comes through the system, then everybody's looks the same.
Mhm.
Right? You have no way to differentiate yourself from somebody else, whether that's through a template or from working really hard on your resume design.
Mhm.
But I have been in interviews for me and for other people where the people were looking at only the generated one, and it never looks as good as the one that you spent. I mean, it's functional, but it
Sure.
never looks as good as the one that you're going to do yourself. So and we have to put it in anyway. I've never applied for a job at the university where it doesn't require you to put in your resume.
Right.
So the answer is, same as your cover letter, if you're going to do one, do it really, really good, and spend a lot of time on it, I think, to make sure
Right.
that it's, let's see, we've had several questions in here about the questions are being asked that are basically, how can I change my career? I'm middle-aged, or I'm not really into social media. Should I start social media because I've never been on it before? But it's all people that from the questions, you can tell it's people in the midst of a transition or wanting to be in a transition, and how to move forward with that transition.
The first thing that comes to mind when people have this sense of, hey, I want to have a total reinvention, really pivoting away from what I've been doing towards something that's new. This is where checking in with yourself on those 4 very important pieces, the VIPs, especially during a major pivot. I bet part of the pivot is behind, I want to do something that's closer to my values and motivators, closer to my interests, closer to how I'm wired, and closer to what my talents are. So go back to the VIPs. And when it comes to the social media piece, so I'll actually tell something on myself. If you Google Josh Taylor, you will only find me on LinkedIn. Now, I don't mind. So I'm 40 years old. Social media came about. I graduated from college in 2003. MySpace and Facebook and those types of things were just starting to crop up not long after I got out of college. Y'all, I have never been interested in social media. It has stressed me out from day one. I took like one hot look at it in 2004 and thought, no, thank you. And I've never been on it. Now, you might have mentioned, except for LinkedIn. To me, I think LinkedIn is a whole separate beast that I'm comfortable being on, but I've never been on Facebook. I've never been on Twitter. And one of the talking points in that video that we watched said that sometimes people think it's a red flag if you're not on social media. And I had a director at my previous institution, which was Morehead State. She was like, yeah, we went looking for you online, but couldn't find you. And that was kind of weird. But like, luckily people, that we were at State and they knew you and they're like, oh yeah, Josh Taylor's great, but I often sometimes wonder myself, like, is it a liability that I don't use all of these other platforms? Anyway, there you go. That's my thought on that. But I do think it would probably be complicated for me if I didn't even have LinkedIn. Then it probably, so for especially when it comes to professional networking, I do stand behind LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn every day, but I have no personal interest in the other ones. That's just me. I say that recognizing, yeah, hey, I've watched these things for 15, 20 years now. We know that they're powerful platforms. There's tremendous opportunity in all of them. And so I'm not against them for other folks. I just don't personally use them.
Well, we have about a minute left, but there's a note from Laron Collier, and it says, are there any resources for a new employee who's trying to explore what different career paths are here at the university could look like? And I want to say that that's actually the platform that I used for Staff Senate, is finding ways that we can connect so that once you get a job here at the university, that you have very clear idea of where your career could go, as opposed to, oh, I've finally gotten a job and I've landed, because it never works that way. There's always something that you're going to want to do to better yourself and to better your surroundings. So, Laron, I'm going to let Josh answer your question, but I want to tell you that we are working on that in the Professional Development Committee. We are working on that as we speak, as part of our active work in committee to help show what these your careers could be here.
Yep, that's exactly right, Terry. I would simply just say to the person who posed that question, stay tuned from us here at Staff Senate, because just like you said, Terry, in our committees, we're really working at ways on helping people within higher ed here at UK. Where can I evolve and grow, even just within this organization that is UK? So stay tuned on that. And meanwhile, I'd say, reach out to an office like the Alumni Association, folks like Amanda Shagney. I've been seeing some of her stuff. Amanda, thank you for all the awesome contributions and offerings you've been putting out there. But yes, folks like us that are in career advising, we would love to have those kind of conversations with you.
And stick with the lunch and learn. So remember, we'll be back in November, Laron, and everybody else. So he'll come back. I think we're going to have really compelling sessions this year. And we hope that you'll come back and bring some friends with you, because it really is important information. And we're trying to use every tool we can to get the information out there. So, so thank you for joining this month. We'll see you next month. And thank you, Josh, and for presenting, and Chris for getting us rolling today. We really appreciate it. So you'll have a great day.
My pleasure. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Terry.
Bye.